Hello everyone, and here's a summary of session 8 of the free PMP training. Session 8 took place on Wednesday, 19th of February at 7 p.m. GMT plus 1. As usual, we will share with you a summary of the session. So, it went for about 3 hours. We've covered 95 slides. We've had 25 in chapter practice questions. Then we've had the 10 chapter tests, the 10 test questions of chapter 7 and the 10 test questions of chapter 8. We've covered chapter 7, performing the project work, with its two sections, section 7.1, which is monitoring the project work, and section 7.2, which is managing the project knowledge. I call the project meetings section. Then we went through chapter 8, which is procurement management. We've covered section 8.1, which is conducting the procurement, and section 8.2, which is the contract types. Here's the summary and top 10 slides of the session. Of course, we started the session with a recap of the previous sessions. Then we started chapter 7, which is performing the work, and we went through section 7.1, monitoring the project work. Okay, we've talked about gold plating, which is giving the customer unnecessary or unneeded quality, customer obsession, which is not being able to say no to the customer and trying to respond to all customer requests, multitasking, which can impact the plan of the project, Pareto rule, when we try to, for the first 20% of the time allocated for the task, try to focus on the work which gives 80% of the outcome. Then also we talked about Parkinson's law, which is dividing the effort based on how much time we have allocated for the task. Student syndrome, which is delaying the start of the task, in order until in order to meet the deadline. We also talked about the last responsible moment, which is a recommended behavior for making decisions, because the last responsible moment is about gathering all the necessary information in order to avoid any premature commitments or making wrong decisions. Okay, in order to have more options and scenarios to evaluate. Okay, then we started section 7.2, which is the project knowledge, managing project knowledge, and I call it the project meetings section. We saw the difference between the tacit and the explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is easy to explain. It can be easily transferred, but tacit knowledge comes from personal experience and it's not easy to record or to explain. And we talked about storytelling, which is one of the tools, how to convey the tacit knowledge. Then we went on seeing the types of meetings. We already talked in chapter 4 in a Scrum framework about the types of meetings in Scrum, but here we're talking overall general project management. Usually in a project we can have different types of meetings, like kickoff meeting, planning meeting, project status meeting or update meeting, lessons learned meeting, the demo meeting, any ad hoc meeting, steering committee meeting, risk management meeting, urgent meeting, etc. Okay, so we really can have different types of meetings. Okay, and we talked about the meeting frequencies, and we shared like from practical experience. Usually, we tend to have in a waterfall project or in a generic project, weekly status meetings, monthly steering committee meeting, one with the customer, or bi-weekly actually internal steering committee meeting without the customer, a monthly steering committee meeting with the customer, etc. Okay, we talked also about the information radiators, because in PMI's mindset it's very important to share information instantly, if possible, transparently. That's a must. And we can use different information radiators such as Kanban board, can be like physical information radiators exposed in the center of the room, or virtual online like Trello, Confluence, etc. But they're very important part of PMI's mindset. We also talked about how to let's say learn from what we're experiencing in the project. So we talked about the difference between double and single loop learning. So single loop learning is comparing the results to the actions taken, but double loop learning is going back to the assumptions. Okay, we also talked about the importance of having a lessons learned meeting. Okay, because lessons learned meeting is about discussing what went well, what could be improved, how to replicate the good practices, how did we resolve the issues, how can we prevent them from happening in the future, because by talking about the issues, how they were resolved, these can be a source of, or this can be a source of risk identification in the current or in the next projects. Okay, we also talked about the importance of having this lessons learned meeting, on ongoing basis. Okay, it will help the organization, better select projects in the future, and the lessons learned, they're recorded in the lessons learned register, which is then added to the organizational process assets. And always, whenever starting a new project, one of the first things you as a project manager need to do is to check the lessons learned registers in the organization's project assets, like lessons learned registers from previous projects, in order to learn from them and identify possible risks and other aspects. Okay, we talked about the 4 L's, like what the team has liked, what has lacked, what had learned, and what is longing for to improve. We talked also about the types of people in the lesson learned meeting: the explorers, the vacationers, the ones who would really have something to share, and the ones who just join just to waste time. Okay, so we talked about the ESVP. Okay. Then we've added the tools and techniques in the 10th chapter, the questions. Then we started chapter number 8, which is procurement management, and we started section 8.1, which is conduct and procurement. We talked about how in waterfall we have a procurement management plan, in which we explain like the processes which will be applied, who is responsible for what, how to identify the procurement needs, the tools and techniques which should be used. Okay, how can changes made to the procurement plan be managed? How are we going to manage our vendors, our suppliers, which legal jurisdiction to follow, etc. Okay, so this we have covered in the procurement management plan. Then also we talked about the bidder conference, all right, which is a meeting happens between the buyer and the seller, where the buyer can request information, can request for quotation, can request a proposal, and the seller, they will provide their code. They might ask for more clarification, so the buyer will have to answer any questions, clarify any ambiguities, etc. So this happens between the buyer and the potential or prospective sellers. Then we talked also about when receiving a large number of offers, how to apply the filtering through the screening system, based on certain criteria. Then with the shortlisted or the short list of potential sellers, we can apply the weighting system with evaluation or source selection criteria in order to select the vendor with the highest score. We also saw the vendors evaluation table, which is kind of similar to the decision matrix and the business case, which we saw in chapter 1. We talked also about certain let's say practices or certain conditions in the market, like oligopoly, when there is multiple sellers in the market, but one seller's actions impacts the whole market. Sole source, like when there is only one seller in the market and we have to deal with them, and this increases the risk. And single source, when there are multiple sellers in the market, but our company deals only with one source, and again that creates limitations and constraints. We also talked about the exit criteria, which are conditions that must be fulfilled in order to consider the job done, the contract done, or they can be used to cancel the contract in case they were not fulfilled. And we talked about something very important, which is the conflict of interest or the wrongdoing, like for example, hiring an unqualified relative to provide services to our company, or starting a company like providing the same similar services to our current employer, or failing to investigate a wrongdoing from a colleague because they're a friend of us, or selecting a vendor because we have stake in their business, or having a romantic relationship with a supervisor, or subordinate. And we talked really about many different types of conflicts of interest or wrongdoing. Okay, we also talked about the different procurement documents, like letter of intent, memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement, basic ordering agreement, purchase order, contract, etc. We talked also about the importance of inspecting the work of the the vendor or the contractor. Okay, we talked about the statistical sampling as a tool for inspection, because it's part of PMI's mindset to inspect the work which is being done. Okay, and then we moved on to section 8.2, which is the contract types. So the contract types, we've talked about the three major contract types, which are fixed price, cost reimbursable, and time and materials. For fixed price, we said we use it when the scope is clear, we don't expect changes, and this secures the buyer because the risk of cost increase is on the seller side. And we saw the three subtypes, which are firm fixed price, FFP, fixed price incentive fee, FPIF, and the fixed price economic price adjustment, FPEPA. And we went and we explained each one of them. Then for cost reimbursable, we said that this type of contract is used when the scope is not well defined. So that we cannot exactly know how much it would cost. So actually, the buyer is at risk of price escalation. In case it goes higher than what they expect. Okay, because the seller is reimbursed for their expenses, and we cannot know for sure what is exactly that needs to be done and until it is done. Okay, and we saw in details the three subtypes of this cost reimbursable contract, which are the cost plus fixed fee, CPFF, cost plus award fee, CPAF, and cost plus incentive fee, CPIF. And we saw the time and materials, T&M type of contract. Yes, we said that is mostly used in agile, but also in agile we can use fixed price and cost reimbursable, and vice versa. Even in waterfall, it's known for fixed price contracts, but we can also use cost reimbursable and time and material. For time and material, we use it if you want to hire freelancers, experts, consultants, and they are reimbursed for their time and any material they have used. Okay, we also talked about the make or buy analysis, and we gave an example of whether we want to buy a machine for more money, but we get it quickly, or make it on our own. It would cost us more time but less money. Okay, so actually here we talked about the make or buy analysis. We also talked about the importance of the negotiation techniques, which is part of the interpersonal skills. Negotiation, we use it when discussing negotiating contracts. It's better if it's done face to face directly. We need to be assertive, not aggressive, and we try to aim for a win-win. Okay, and we need to know where to compromise. Okay, so this is negotiation. Then we talked about the contract administrator, the person who's got intensive knowledge or extensive knowledge of law and finance, legal law, finance law, and they are the ones responsible for drafting, creating the contract, and ensuring that it is respected by all contracting parties. We talked about trial engagement, which is asking for a trial period to try out the delivery or the performance of the vendor before having a long-term contract with them. And we talked about the force majeure, which are exceptional circumstances, natural disasters, civil unrest, etc., which they relieve each contracting party from any liabilities or obligations in case they couldn't fulfill the contract due to this force majeure. Then also we talked about the claims administration, which is a dispute resolution. So again, in any conflict, as in any conflicting situation, in any disagreement, we can have conflicts, disputes with the vendor, with the contractor. Okay, so we preferably, the best preferred solution is to try to have direct negotiation. If we fail, we try to have assisted or indirect negotiation, also known as alternative dispute resolution, ADR, like through mediation or arbitration. We discussed those. And the last resort will be to go to the court for litigation, and we try to avoid that as much as possible. Then we've had the tools and techniques, and we have the tips and tricks. Then we've had the tips and tricks and the chapter test questions. Okay, then here are our top 5 picked practice questions of this session 8. So question 1: a project manager decided to incorporate the latest technological advancement with the client's devices at no additional cost to the project. Upon completion and submission of the project deliverables, the client rejected the devices despite having the latest features. What should the project manager have done? Incorporated the changes within the scope of the project, reviewed the quality inspections, complied with the customer specifications, or documented the technical reviews with a new change. Now, the project manager decide by themselves, to give the customer quality or more quality than was requested. Okay, so this is a form of gold plating, and we really, or customer obsession, and we really don't want that. Okay, so what the project manager should have done is to stick really with the specified or the requested specifications, not giving them more, like, even if they don't have to pay for that. Okay, so it's not about incorporating the change in the scope or reviewing the quality inspections. It's not about documenting the technical reviews of the new changes, but complying with the customer specifications. That's what the project manager should have done. Okay, not give the customer more than what they have requested. Question two. In an agile project, the team is facing uncertainty regarding the selection of a new tool for the project. According to the principle of the last responsible moment, when should the project team make a decision about adopting the tool? As soon as possible to avoid any delays in project planning, immediately after gathering initial requirements to ensure the project progresses on time, at the latest possible time when sufficient information has been gathered without negatively impacting the project's outcome, or after the project deadline to ensure the tool is fully tested before the decision is made. Now, why did I keep this question? Because actually, the last responsible moment means we're taking decisions after we have gathered, all the necessary information, okay? And of course, before it's too late. So the right answer here is at the latest possible time when we have all the necessary information, but without negatively impact the project outcome. So the team should make decisions not as soon as possible, not immediately, and not after the project deadline. Absolutely. Question three. A project is nearing completion and the project manager is preparing for a lessons learned meeting. Some team members feel it is unnecessary because the project was successful, while others are concerned that discussing mistakes might lead to blame. What should the project manager do to ensure the meeting is productive? Cancel the meeting since the project was successful and there are no major issues to discuss. Focus the discussions only on the positive aspects of the project to maintain team morale. Emphasize that the purpose is to identify both successes and improvement areas without assigning blame. Collect feedback anonymously to avoid discomfort during the meeting. Now, we said that the lessons learned meeting is to discuss, what went well, what can be improved. It's not to blame anyone, okay? And they are really a must-have meeting, so we cannot cancel the meeting. We should not focus on discussing only the positive aspects, and it's not about collecting feedback anonymously. We really need to emphasize that the purpose is to identify both successes and improvement areas, but without, blaming anyone. Question 4. During the execution of a project, the project manager identifies that the vendor is consistently missing delivery deadlines and the quality of deliverables is below the agreed standards. The project manager reviews the contract and finds exit criteria that specify conditions under which the contract can be terminated. What should the project manager do next? Immediately terminate the contract and engage a new vendor. Notify the vendor of their performance issues and review the exit criteria with stakeholders. Escalate the performance issues to the change control board, or continue working with the vendor while developing a contingency plan. Now here we have an underperforming vendor. Okay, so what we need to do is not immediately terminate the contract. That's not in PMI's mindset. Not escalate the issue and not continue working with them in these current conditions. We need to notify the vendor of their poor performance, agree on improvement plan with them, and also review the exit criteria, and just to make sure that the vendor is aware that if they continue with this performance, we might exit the contract. The last picked question for you, from the in chapter test questions, okay, or practice questions. During contract negotiations with a preferred vendor, the project manager and the procurement team encounter disagreements over the delivery schedule and payment terms. What is the best approach for the project manager to take in this situation? Stand firm on the original schedule and payment terms since they were approved during planning. Escalate the disagreement to the project sponsor for resolution. Collaborate with the vendor to explore alternatives that satisfy both parties, or accept the vendor's terms to avoid delaying the project schedule. Now, here we have disagreements with the vendor over delivery schedule and payment terms. Okay. Now, what we need to do is negotiate. All right. So standing firm on our demands will not work. Escalating to the sponsor, not necessary. Accepting the vendor's terms, like surrounding, no. We need to collaborate with the vendor to negotiate, explore alternatives that satisfy both parties. Okay. So thank you so much for watching this summary of session 8. See you on session 9, which will be on Friday, 21st of February at 7 p.m. GMT plus 1.